started. Okay, so welcome everyone. And it's really good to see you. It's a joy to have you here. And I'm hoping that today's session is going to be quite a powerful one. So I do kind of encourage you, ripples into, oh, this is fantastic. Oh, I like this. We should probably jump into that. Okay, ripples in time. Wow, okay. Leadership legacy, my impact that's led to improve better life outcomes and health for individuals, communities, and populations. So some big ones. I mean, I'm loving that. We're going to pick up more about that as we go through. So welcome again. It really is good to have you. I do hope that today is going to be a powerful, powerful session, because this week inside our Gifted for Action series, we're actually moving beyond the short-term success, beyond matrices, and we're looking beyond milestones. Okay, we're actually talking about legacy, not the legacy that you leave behind, but the legacy that God builds through you. So we're looking at legacy in a different way. You see, success fades, but legacy multiplies. And real leadership isn't about, well, it's not only measured by what you achieve today, but it's actually by what you set in motion for tomorrow. So real leadership, real legacy is not just about today, it's what you put in motion for tomorrow. So that's just something for us to think about. Okay, just that you know you're in the right place then. Our mission is to create a space where leaders can align their faith, their values, and calling so that their influence carries both excellence and integrity. I think those two things are really important. We believe that eternal impact grows from spiritual alignment, not just from striving for short term success. So, in other words, we help leaders to align their faith, their purpose, and influence so that they can build a legacy that lasts, that impacts, that shapes people, culture, and generations long after the moment has passed. So that's kind of what we're all about. So welcome to today. So this is what we're going to explore together today. So we're going to look at the generational shift. Okay, so seeing leadership through the lens of long-term God-led impact. So that's one thing we're going to look at. We're going to look at, success versus stewardship, understanding the difference, if there is a difference. Okay, we're going to be looking at that. And three, we're going to look at the legacy markers. So three ways that you can start building your legacy today or continue your journey of building legacy today. So I like to share some kind of real life examples, just some ideas, a couple of ideas from other people, and the power of obedience over ambition, and see how that shows up. And then we're going to have a bit of an interactive reflection, which is about naming the legacy that God is calling you to build. And then the final bit is just, a call to action, your next steps that I could support you with. So shaping legacy, a legacy of faith, impact, and obedience. For those who don't know me, okay, my name's Irenka. Hey, okay, Irenka, and I'm a leadership development coach. I'm dedicated to helping faith-driven leaders align their talents, their values, and their spiritual gifts to inspire positive change, to build ethical leadership, and to empower, legacy lasting purpose. So that's kind of what I'm about. So that's me. Okay, so let's start here. So whether we like it or not, we live in a world that's obsessed with instant results. Okay, it's about quick wins, visible achievements, positive, productivity matrices. So it's there, it's in what we do. But research consistently reveals that reveals something deeper. So according to Deloitte, oh, by the way, if you don't know me, I love statistics. I love to bring statistics and stuff just to kind of make the point, okay? So it's not just, oh, it's in Irenka's head. There are people out there thinking similar stuff. So according to Deloitte in 2024, 71% of leaders say that they feel pressure to prioritize short-term success over long-term impact. So that's one study. There was another study, some research that was done by McKinsey in 2023. And this was quite stark. It states that only 18% say that they intentionally think about the legacy that they're leaving. So 18% intentionally think about the legacy that they're leaving. And then Barna in 2024 found that 65% of Christian professionals struggle to connect their faith with their long-term purpose. Okay, so just like, I don't know how to do that. It's almost like there's still two things for me. So this tells us tells us many things, but one thing that definitely tells us is that leaders aren't lacking ambition, they're lacking alignment. So it's that alignment, that ability to kind of align all areas of their life, and also alignment with God's vision, not just their goals. You see, legacy isn't an accident. I think legacy is a decision. So as we kind of go through anything that I kind of say that you think, what's she on? You can let me know in the chat. Things that you agree with, you can give me those kind of thumbs up signs as well. And, let's just, see what we get from what we've got. And then we'll obviously talk about it as well. So moving on then, so I don't know if before I move on, has anybody got anything they wanted to add? If you do, from what I've said so far, just feel free to drop that in. Okay, so we're going to zoom out for a little bit and talk about the bigger picture. So in scripture, God never calls leaders to build for now. He actually calls them to build for generations. When I first thought about that, okay. But then when I look at some of those really big Bible characters, if you think about Abraham, he didn't just receive a promise, he carried a generational assignment or a generational promise. It was for lots of others. Joseph, he didn't just manage the resources of Pharaoh or Egypt and those areas, he actually preserved nations. Definitely. David didn't just write psalms of praise and adoration, his obedience shaped a whole lineage. And then there's Jesus Christ. His leadership wasn't for a moment, it was for eternity. And we're still in that path of eternity now. So you see, faith-driven leadership is a generational leadership. And I love what you're saying there. Society typically isn't driven by legacy. It's driven by short-term greed and ego, definitely. So if that's the atmosphere that we're working in, we can already see there's a light that we can shine in that. And it's about taking our place and making our legacy be that light. And that comes with issues, I get that, but definitely we're called to be light. Okay, so when you're talking about legacy, it tends to ask bigger questions. So not just what am I achieving, but what am I sowing? Not just what am I building, but who am I becoming? Not just what will people see today, but actually what will people inherit tomorrow? So legacy is not just what you leave, for people. Legacy is what people become because you lived. So I don't know if you want to write that one down, but I love that one. So legacy is not what you leave for people. Legacy is what people become because you lived. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that. When I read that, I thought, wow, Irenka, you're pretty cool. But no, somebody else might have said it before me. But I just thought that was just like a big piece. So any thoughts on that, then feel free. But before we move on, I do have a question. Actually, that's an interesting one. We're also seeing the generational shift in other major belief systems in the world. I think there's a whole movement going on where people are being more questioning. They're checking out. I think there's like a real hunger for truth, real truth, whatever kind of religious belief system you fall into. So I think you're definitely right. I love that. So a quick question then before we move on. So this could be just a yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down. But do you think that success and stewardship are the same thing or not? So do you think that success and stewardship are the same thing or not? So that could be a yes or no, a thumbs up or thumbs down. Yeah, that'd be interesting to see. Okay, related but not the same. Okay, that's a good way of putting it. Okay, so that's good. I'll go with that one. If anybody's got anything else to add to that, then I'm going to keep looking at that to see what comes up. So, do you think that success and stewardship are the same thing or not? No, success may not. Um, okay, good stewardship. Okay, so they may not be. All right. Okay, let's see what I think then. Okay, so now we're going to clear for myth, is what I like to put it. Success and stewardship are not the same thing. When we look at it in some kind of micro details, success says things like, how much can I build? Where stewardship would say, how deeply can I serve? Success says, what can I achieve? Stewardship says, what has God assigned me? Success says, how do I increase? Where stewardship says, well, how do I multiply what God entrusted me with or has entrusted to me? So I think that when your leadership kind of starts to flow from stewardship, a number of things happen. I think your pace slows, your purpose deepens, and your influence has a chance to expand. And here's another thought you might want to write down. Because I think that God breathes on what you look after, not on what you chase after. So God breathes on what you look after, not on what you chase after. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that. Agree, not agree. God breathes on whatever you do. It could be, so that's just God breathes on what you look after, not necessarily what you chase after. So any thoughts on that, feel free to drop them in. So we've got, they're not the same, but there are some, they're related in some way. Okay. So I'm now going to move on just to think about a couple of examples. And if you've got any other kind of companies or people that you think fall into this, then drop their names in the chat as well. That would be really good. So I'm just going to think about some real life examples. I was looking at doing a bit of research and I've come across a couple of things. So I've seen this with leaders across industries and also in ministry as well. So there's one leader and business owner who honoured the weekly rhythm of rest. So for them, their Sabbath, whether that was Saturday or Sunday, was really important, and they made that something that was kind of seen within their business. I've actually know about 3 or 4 people personally who have done this. Even when it cost revenue, it was like, this is important, and I want to make that available to others. So their team culture, though, was actually transformed by that action. Their creativity rose, their turnover dropped, as in staff turnover dropped, and their unity, so that team performance, team togetherness, actually increased. So that's kind of one example, and there's 2 or 3 people I have in mind for that. But I also think about, is it the entertainer, the shop The Entertainer, where because of his belief, he doesn't open his stores on a Sunday, even though major competition would do that. And you'd think that that would cause his profits to shrink, but actually they're very, very profitable. And when he started to do that, there was actually an increase in their profitability, which I thought was very interesting. So if you've got any more, then drop them in. Also, there was another CEO who actually chose humility over hierarchy. And that was in a very kind of hierarchical organization as well. But they chose to lead with compassion instead of control. And the ripple effect of that transformed their entire organization's culture. So for me, these leaders, are not driven by ambition. They were anchored by obedience. There's something within them that's like, what, I'm going with that. I'm going against the flow. I'm going against what society norms are telling me. So for me, obedience doesn't just create results. It's that thing that creates legacy as well. So when we're actually able to be obedient to our faith and live that out, it creates legacy. It leaves something behind. So let's kind of move on to some practical. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on any of that before I move on to the practical, or any questions about that. You might have some questions about how is that really possible? Just to drop those in, or that wouldn't work in my industry. Drop those in, and as we move on to just some practical ways that may actually help you to do that. So here are 3 simple simple, faith-aligned ways to actually, begin building your legacy today, or to continue in your legacy journey. So number one for me is document your values. See, legacy fades when it isn't written down, when it's not shared with others, or it's not lived out consistently. So to help you to keep your values alive, write them down, write down what matters most to you. You know, what are the truths that actually anchor you? Write those down as well, or share them. The scriptures that actually shape your leadership, be willing to share those with the people around you. And actually talk about the principles that you want other people to inherit from you. Okay, so all of those things together can actually become your leadership blueprint, and therefore be part of your legacy, what you're leaving behind. But when you're talking about them, sharing them, they're not just something that's in your head. Other people get to engage, and that's how your legacy lives through other people's behaviours. So that's kind of one way. So I hope that makes sense. So that's one way. And then number two, as leaders, this is something that we're all called to do, is to invest in people. So legacy multiplies through others. And that's through whether you're doing mentorship, whether you encourage other people, or even your consistency of character. I can't remember the author right now, but there was that, it's up there, The Return on Character. And there's a book called The Return on Character, and that's all about the impact that you make based on your character and how that plays out. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, okay. Okay, I love that. So I saw a lot of challenges that, HR faced in your career. So I love that. And it was important and easier. And that's an interesting one, to build from the ground up with solid foundations in a way that I thought the business could be achieved. And that was one of the reasons why you built your own organization and built Lightrise. And these approaches are consistent across the Valley of Humanity. So definitely, there is something about your behavior is what makes the difference. It's what you do, not what you say. And I often talk about the principle of parallel processing, where, the people from at the top that you work with, if how they behave, so how you behave, is what will filtrate into an organization, and the people at the bottom will start behaving that way. Doesn't matter what you say, it's actually what you do. So I think that's amazing, and that is part of it. And I guess if we are business leaders and we are given opportunities to begin something amazing in the world, doing it in a really great way, in an ethical way, actually does start the legacy process. So definitely love that. That's fantastic. Okay, so continuing, number two is about how we invest in people. How do we give of our time through mentorship, encouragement, and that consistency of character? So, and I think you're echoing this in what you're saying, Gareth. It's definitely been echoed. People remember how you made them feel. So if we think back to people who've impacted our lives, how people made us feel at the time would be the thing we remember. So people remember what you taught them. They also remember the standard that you carried. So as you're starting step, oh, okay, sorry, don't know what, let me close that down. Good, thank you. Looking at all my messages. So let me just have a look in case there's a message on here for somebody that's on their thing. Let's have a look. Okay, cool. Okay. No, it's something else. Okay, so that's that whole thing about people remember how you made them feel, and they remember what you taught them and the standard you carried. And I think that is what we're talking about. So legacy is the influence that outlives your involvement. It's the influence that outlives your involvement. And I guess that is it in a nutshell. Number three then is about integrating your faith daily, not just at the weekend. So not just Saturdays or Sundays, and not just when things go wrong. So that whole thing, we hear lots of stories about when, we're about to drown and everybody remembers Jesus, whether they know him or not. Oh, please, So it's not about that. It's integrating your faith on a daily basis, or finding ways to do that. I don't like to use the word should, because I think that takes people away from choice, but your faith should or could be woven into your daily habits. Because when prayer, integrity, and compassion and obedience become part of your daily habits, the daily habits that actually shapes you, then your consistency becomes your testimony. So when prayer, integrity, compassion, and obedience are part of your daily habits, then that's what actually your consistency shapes your testimony. It becomes that, and that's what legacy is. So I don't know if you agree with me or don't agree with me. So kind of let me know that. But that's what we're talking about. So document your values, share them, invest in people. So put out, pay forward, and then also integrate what you do, your faith, into a daily habit so people can see that. Okay. So now I'd like us just to give a moment to pause and reflect together. So I do love it, and I really do appreciate when people come on and join me on these sessions. It's just, your 45 minutes just to stop, rethink, and reflect. So to take a moment to pause. So my question to you is, where is God inviting you to shift from success to stewardship? So is it in your pace, your priorities, your team, your ambitions, or something else? Where is God inviting you? Where is He prompting you to make that shift from success to more stewardship? Pace, priorities, team, or your ambitions? So I'm going to ask you just to drop a word in the chat that of an area that you think God is calling you to build your legacy in. So legacy, not just results. So think that for a moment. And yeah, just drop a word in the chat. And it might not be any of those areas. It might be something else. It could be a combination of things. So where is God inviting you? And I was thinking about this before. So if you're a journaling person, then feel free to write that down. Because what you name before God, I believe that He can transform. So that's part of that faith journey. Priorities, his versus mine, to get more balance is definitely one that comes up. That was one of the ones that featured in mine. A big one for me was that, I guess, part of the priorities was family. So I've got children with additional needs, and lots of things have been happening recently that really require my attention, even though I'm kind of like full on for what I believe I'm called to do for God. And it's just recognizing that actually it was making my family a priority and working my business around them more in this season. So still doing what I need to do, but giving that priority to family was something. And then therefore that had an impact on my pace. So I needed to slow down in order to do the things that needed to happen, if that makes sense. So there were some other prompts, and I didn't necessarily like them, but there were some of the prompts that was coming at me. So, where is God calling you to shift? So feel free to drop yours in that in the chat as well. But I do love that, priorities, and that really looking at his priorities versus my priorities. Do they match? Are they the same or not? So if you've got anything to add in there, I'll just wait a moment, and then we'll move on. And then hopefully we'll get through, and then we'll be able to have some time to talk once the recording comes off. Okay. So that's nice. Okay. So I tend just to go with the flow on a daily basis. So small steps towards ongoing positive impact, reading the signs, and remaining situational. But you have developed a faith in that approach. So that kind of makes sense. So it's kind of part of your faith journey is to be with and see what happens, to be open to the leading and to do what's right in the moment. That would make sense. So that, yeah, I love that. And that's a real maturity, I guess, in your relationship, and be able to trust that as well. And so in that openness, the Holy Spirit has an opportunity to kind of go, actually, I want you to do this or to do that, and make that apparent for you. So yeah, I love that too. So that's great. So going with the flow is a good thing. Maybe we can learn a bit more from how to do that. So that's really good. Okay, cool. So beautiful. And I do appreciate the openness. Okay, so I'm just looking at time. So as we kind of get ready to close, there's a few things that I think it's useful just to remember. And if there's any more, then please drop them in the chat if there's something else you're taking away from today. So for me, number one, legacy is not built in a moment. It's built in moments that you choose obedience over ambition. It's those moments where you choose his will over yours. It's those moments where you're open to what's required of you and you're stepping into that and your faith is stepping into that. That's where legacy is built over time. I think number two, success may be visible, but legacy is eternal. It's that thing that's going to happen when you're no longer in the rooms. We don't get to see it necessarily, but it happens if we've lived our life well, if we've led well. I think number three, your influence multiplies when your values are lived, shared, and shown to others. I think definitely, because that whole do as I do, not as I say, your influence actually multiplies. When people see you do things consistently, even in the tough times, even when you go against what societal norms are, and they see you persevere through that, that actually inspires people internally. And your influence kind of multiplies without you realizing it. It's that ripple effect that happens just because you're doing you in being your best you. And then number four, when your faith shapes your leadership, and that's linked to three, your impact will outlive you. If you think about those people you've had in your life who you just kind of, you remember what they've said to you, how they've treated you, the influence they've had on you, even if they're not here anymore, you still remember. And that's the same thing that will happen with the legacy that you leave behind too. Mm-hmm. But my question is, does any other thing stand out from today's session for you? What do you particularly want to remember, if there's anything? Drop those comments in there as well, so we can see what has landed with you. So what particularly, 1, 2, 3 or 4 was key takeaways for you, or other things that have stirred as we've been talking and sharing. Please drop them in the chat. That would be great. And if you've got any questions, drop them there and I'll do my best to answer them too. So if there's anything you want to say, please feel free just to drop that as we get ready to close. Okay. And then this is what we're going to go to. Okay. So I think we've been talking about it a lot. Pause and reflect. Okay, let's just get back a little bit, just before I go into this bit. Okay, so pause and reflect. Okay, so that's a key takeaway. And I think we do make time for that. And, like I've said, just coming away and being in a group like this actually gives you that opportunity because you're away from the everyday. Which reminds me, do check in for our next event because we're going to be doing something special. I'm not supposed to say that, but I will. We're doing something very special, so I really would love you to look at that and come and join us for a different space. But pausing and reflecting is definitely a key one. And the others, feel free to drop them in there. And for me, so that's, they're definitely. So for me, pause and reflect is one. But that whole thing, like just thinking about the legacy that I'm leaving is a big piece. Okay, let's move on then. So legacy, like I said, doesn't actually happen accidentally. It happens intentionally through faith, obedience, and alignment, definitely. Okay, wide awareness of people's perception of success versus, so not everybody thinks like you. That is a good one. That's good to know, because how you live out you, it actually creates your legacy as well and makes you make your mark in the world. And in those moments of kind of, let me just go with the flow, that might just change, well, how do I interact with somebody? How do I let somebody else's perspective influence mine and vice versa? So I think that's great. Definitely good. So fantastic with that one. Okay, so I guess my invitation is, if you are ready to shape a legacy of faith and impact, then I'd love to walk alongside you and support you. That's what I'd love to do. So I'd encourage you to book your free business faith reset session with me, where we can explore your leadership and how your leadership can align with God's pace, purpose, and generational calling. So just look differently at, well, what has God calling you to, and what could that look like? And maybe there's a different trajectory that you could be following. So if you're interested in that, please feel free just to use the QR code on the screen, or there's a link in the chat, and just jump into my diary. It's kind of a 40-minute session, and we can just have a broader one-to-one conversation about where you are in terms of your leadership alignment with pace, purpose, and generational calling. And also, I'd love to invite you to join the Faith Inspired Leadership Lab and membership group. It's an opportunity to connect with other leaders, access, values aligned and or faith-based resources. Got loads of stuff in there, and be part of a new and growing community. It's a place where leaders grow in faith, purpose, and long-term impact. Okay, so any questions about your next potential steps, feel free to drop them in as well, and I'll see if I can answer those. So all I want to say, as I just look on to see if anything comes in there, is I really want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate your time. As soon as, like I said, we're going to stick around. We've got about 10 minutes or so, and we can have a general chat once I turn the recording off. But I just want to leave you with this. Psalms 78:4 says, or it reminds us to tell the generation to come, tell to the generation to come the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, and tell of his great might and power and the wonderful works that he has done. So it's talking about what God has done, and it's the part of the legacy that we're heralding. So I'm just praying that, may your leadership be rooted in integrity, your decisions carry purpose, and that your legacy speaks long after you're gone. So until next time, I want to encourage you to lead with faith, to serve with obedience, and build with God. So stay blessed. I'm going to switch the recording off when I can, like this.